Yeah, I do. Yeah, shoot, you can stand for her.
Alright,
So,
let me get set up and I'll sit down. Guys see me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We are calling the case of the estate of Samuel Farnsworth versus the city of Philadelphia. Plaintiff, can I have your appearance?
Yes, Your Honor, good morning. My name is Patrick McDonald. I'm joined at council table today by Ms. Abigail Davis.
good morning, Your Honor.
Together, we're here on behalf of the plaintiff, the estate of Samuel Farnsworth.
And that's Patrick McDonald.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, defense.
Good morning, Your Honor. My name is Kole Alfonso, and I'm joined today at council table by my good friend and colleague, Miss Hannah Lay.
Good morning, Your Honor.
And together, we represent the defendant in today's proceedings, the city of Philadelphia.
Kole Alfonso.
Perfect.
Alfonso McDonald. All right. I know we have no housekeeping. Is there anything else we need to address before we begin?
Yes, Your Honor, just one question for the clerk.
Sure.
Prior to trial, the court pre-admitted a document, the expert report of the plaintiff's expert, Ryan Debnath. Ms. Debnath has been declared unavailable pursuant to pretrial order number 7. We intend during our case in chief to read a portion of that document onto the record. Would it be all right at that time if my co-counsel assumes the witness stand to read the document?
Any objections to that?
Not at all.
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we begin, do we have a timekeeper? Good?
Yes, Your
Okay. There are no bathroom breaks and my round yesterday went very quickly. I don't think it's going to be an issue, but if anybody needs to go to the bathroom urgently, just tell me and we will take a break. All right?
Well, a comfort break in biz.
Yeah, yeah. All right, plaintiff, you can open.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mind if I close the door for you?
Yes, please. Thank you.
May it please the court. Counsel. The city chose to save money instead of a man's life. Members of the jury, today you'll hear about a young 23-year-old man named Sam Farnsworth, who lost his life during this city's Super Bowl after party earlier this year. You'll hear that Sam died because of a risk that city officers knew about. Every time a Philadelphia team wins big, the fans crowd the streets and climb the street ramps. The city knows that. And the city knows that those fans can fall. As you listen to the evidence today, I want you to pay attention to 3 risks that the city created that caused Sam's death. The light posts, the ladders, and the landing zones. It's February 9th, 2025, and the Philadelphia Eagles have just won the Super Bowl. Crowds pour through the streets. Music is blasting. Fireworks are heard overhead. The atmosphere is electric. And right in the middle of it is young Eagles fan Sam Farnsworth. He's taking the moment, celebrating, smiling, pumping his fist. Then Sam and his friend Lanny see one of those light posts that the fans always climb. So they go to check it out. Sam says, "Hey, this doesn't look like it has any grease on it. Doesn't the city always put grease there?" Lanny says, "Yeah, it looks like we'd be able to climb it. I wonder if that's okay." And so they look for a way. And they see at the base of a pole a metal fence that Lanny uses as a ladder to climb up. Lanny goes up to the top and Sam stands at the bottom. Half a block away, a city police officer is watching the situation. He sees everything. He sees the fans as they climb to the top of the pole. He sees them use the fence as a ladder. But he decides not to clear the landing zone. Instead of going over and telling Sam to move, instead of moving the fence at the base of the pole, the officer panics. He rushes to the pole and yells up. And members of the jury, you'll hear that decision turned a dangerous situation into a catastrophe. When the officer yelled up, Len slips and falls, landing on her friend Sam. Sam trumples to the ground, bangs his head on the same metal fence that's still there, and he bleeds out. Members of the jury, that's why you're here. Because you'll learn today that the reason the city didn't grease the light posts, the reason the city put the fences there that fans use as ladders, the reason that the city didn't hire enough police officers to clear the landing zones was because of the cost. They chose to save money instead of a man's life. That's why Sam's parents have brought a claim of negligence against the city. To prove our case, we have to prove three elements more likely true than not. First, that the city acted unreasonably. Second, that Sam suffered harm. And third, that the city's unreasonable actions caused the harm that Sam suffered. We'll prove those elements today by showing you three risks the city knew about, could have prevented, but chose to ignore. The light posts, the ladders, and the landing zones. First, Sam's friend, Miss Lanny Davidson, will take that stand and tell you that the city didn't take the normal precautions they typically do to grease the light posts, meaning that fans were able to climb up. She'll tell you that instead, the city put metal fences at the base of the light posts that fans used as ladders that made it easier to climb. And then the city's director of public safety will take this stand, Ms. Walter Evans. And we expect she'll admit that that dangerous metal fence the city put there was at the base of the ladder, and that that's what caused Sam to bleed out because he hit his head against it. And we expect that Ms. Edwards will admit that the reason the city didn't hire more police officers to clear the landing zones was because they thought it would cost too much. They chose to save money instead of a man's life. And that's what, at the end of trial, I'll ask you to find them lied. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Fence?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ready.
May I proceed?
You may.
They chose to jump that barricade. Members of the jury, no one will say Mr. Farnsworth's death wasn't a tragedy. It was. What the four of you have to decide is if Miss Davidson's own choice, Mr. Farnsworth's own choice to jump that barricade caused his death. So let's go back. February 9th, 2025. Mr. Farnsworth, Miss Davidson, they watch on big screen TVs as the Philadelphia Eagles become Super Bowl champions. When Miss Davidson taps Mr. Farnsworth on the shoulder and says, you know what we should do? We should go climb one of those light posts. As the two of them walk towards that post, they can hear the city's warnings. How the mayor of Philadelphia told its fans, do not climb those poles. As they get closer, they can remember how just 2 weeks ago, someone died trying to climb one of those poles. When they get to the base of that pole, there's not a fence, there's a police barricade all the way around. Now, right here, they have a choice. Miss Davidson, she chooses to jump over that barricade, and Mr. Farnsworth, he chooses to jump that barricade too. And if they told you the rest. But if they just take 2 steps back and choose not to jump that barricade, we all wouldn't be here today, but Mr. Farnsworth would. When the plaintiff sues the city of Philadelphia for the choices Mr. Farnsworth and Miss Davidson made, the law tells us what to do. The plaintiff, they have the burden to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the city of Philadelphia is responsible for their choice. Today, the defense, we've taken on our own burden. It's called an affirmative defense. We're going to show you that the choices Mr. Farnsworth and Miss Davidson made to jump that barricade, to climb that pole, is what caused their death. To do that today, we're going to be talking about 2 things. How the city controlled the crowd, how they chose to jump that barricade. Let's take those one at a time. First, that the city controlled the crowd. Members of the jury, maybe you were there, maybe you weren't. But we all know what the city of Philadelphia, after a Super Bowl win, what that looks like. It's crazy. You'll learn today that the city of Philadelphia doesn't just sit back and let that happen. We're going to bring you the director of public safety for the city of Philadelphia. He'll look you in the eyes today, and she'll tell you how what the city does to make sure those fans are safe. She'll tell you how the city used to grease their light posts, but when that didn't work, they decided, they took the initiative to build police barricades around every pole in the city of Philadelphia. Members of the jury, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink. The city of Philadelphia can build police barricades around every pole, but they can't force fans to stay behind it. Brings us to our second fact. They chose to jump that barricade. That's undisputed today. Mr. Farnsworth, Miss Davidson, they choose to jump that barricade, and when they do so, they take their lives in their own hands. You'll be asked today to decide if that choice is when their own personal responsibility to keep themselves safe, that it matters. Now, members of the jury, hear me clearly when I say this. Mr. Farnsworth had every right in the world to go out into the streets of Philadelphia and celebrate with his friends, with his family, and with his city. The plaintiff, they're right. The city of Philadelphia has a responsibility to protect their fans. The fans have a responsibility to protect themselves. When they choose to jump that barricade, that choice is theirs. Which is why at the end of today's trial, we'll ask you to find the city of Philadelphia not liable. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, counsel. Plaintiff, you can call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Lanny Davis. See,
You may.
thank you. Good morning, ma'am. Can you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Hi, my name's Lanny Davidson.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
I can. I'm from Philadelphia, Newtown Square, but I moved to Los Angeles for law school a few years back.
Ma'am, can you tell the members of the jury what happened on February 9th of this year?
It was the Super Bowl. I went there to celebrate with my friends after the Eagles won. There was an accident and he didn't make it.
Who's your friend?
His name is Sam Barnsworth.
What happened?
Y'all might know about the tradition to climb lampposts after a big win. I did that. But I lost my grip and I fell. Landed on top of him.
And we will have to discuss exactly what happened in just a moment. But first, I want to discuss a light post, a ladder, and a landing zone. And let's start with the light posts themselves.
Yep.
Do city officials ever do anything on a sports day to the light posts?
That's what I've seen before. Yeah. Usually the day of or maybe the day before, they'll start to put this stuff on it. Kind of slippery, greasy.
When they greased the poles before, did you climb up the light post?
No, I mean, you touch it, it was slippery. I didn't think could get a grip.
What about Super Bowl Sunday this year? Did you see grease on the posts then?
No, it was fine. It wasn't slippery.
Without the grease on the post that you climbed, how difficult was it to get up?
It was easy.
Now that we've talked a little bit about the light posts themselves, I want to see if you had a ladder or anything to help you get up. If you could take a look at Exhibit 35, it should be in that binder there.
Okay.
You recognize that?
Yes. This is one of the fences that was around the post that night.
Just to be clear, is the post in that picture the same one that you climbed up?
That's on a different street. But the fence that's around it, it looks the exact same. It seems to be about the same dimensions.
Your Honor, the plaintiff offers Exhibit 35.
Any objection?
Without objection.
Okay, it's admitted.
Ma'am, taking a look at Exhibit 35, could you explain, actually, Your Honor, may I publish a copy to the members of the jury?
You may.
Publishing 35. Using Exhibit 35, could you explain to the members of the jury how you were able to climb up the post that day?
Yeah, so it's a few feet off of the ground. I got on the corner of it and used it to hoist myself up, get higher, kind of like a step stool.
Hold on, ma'am. Are you saying that you climbed over the fence into this enclosed area and then went straight up?
No. The fence itself, that's what helped me get up there in the first place.
How difficult was it to climb from the top of the fence onto the ladder?
It was easy.
Ma'am, now that we've talked about the light posts and how you got up there, I want to talk just a moment about what was beneath the landing zone. When you were climbing up, could you see below you?
I could.
What'd you see?
That's where Sam was. Him right on the inside of the fence.
Ma'am, you told us how you were able to get up on top of the post. Were you able to get down?
Tried to. I wanted maybe Sam to have a turn, so I tried to climb down, but I lost my grip. Started slipping and I fell.
And what happened next?
I mean, it happened so fast that one moment I was on top and the next it was just Sam. It landed right on top of him. There was blood everywhere. I didn't know what to do. He stopped moving. I started crying. I tried to call for help, but so we lost him.
Ms. Davidson, I'm so sorry for your loss. After you fell, were there any police officers or officials or anything like that?
After, yeah, that they came there pretty soon. Yeah,
You said pretty soon. How sure are you about that time frame?
I'm certain that was one of the worst things that ever happened to me. They weren't there one moment, and then it was like as soon as I got down there, they were there ready to help immediately.
And when did you decide to climb up the light post?
When I realized it wasn't greased this time,
How'd you get up there?
using that fence.
You told us a moment ago that a police officer arrived pretty soon after you fell. Did the officer clear Sam or the fence out from underneath the pole?
Not until after. When it was too late.
Davis, and thank you for your time. Your Honor, no further questions.
Ross?
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, ma'am.
Morning.
I want to start our conversation today, talking about what you knew before you chose to jump that barricade, all right?
Okay.
Ma'am, you're from the city of Philadelphia.
I am. I was raised in Newtown Square.
You know how Philadelphia celebrates its victories.
Saw it on the news growing up. We always go out to Broad Street.
Ma'am, you've seen how individuals choose to climb those poles out on Broad Street.
I have.
On February 9th, 2025, before you choose to climb that pole, you knew it was a dangerous thing to do.
I mean, I haven't really seen anyone get hurt, but you were getting pretty high off the ground.
And even if you didn't see anyone get hurt, you heard that someone had died trying to climb one of those poles.
It was about, a month or two before this one for the NFC game, after they stopped racing.
And it wasn't a month, wasn't 2 months. It was 2 weeks before the Super Bowl.
That's right, you're right, yeah, for the NFC game.
2 weeks before the Super Bowl, you hear about a man named Nasir Muldrow dies after he chose to climb one of those poles.
It was awful.
It was 2 weeks after you learned about that death is when you chose to climb that pole on Super Bowl Sunday.
That's when the game was.
And let's talk about your choices. It's February 9th, 2025. You're watching the game with your friend, Mr. Farnsworth.
We had went out to a few different restaurants, watched the game, hop from place to place around Broad Street. That's right.
You also choose to drink.
I mean, yeah, it was game day. We had a drink.
And it's game day, you started drinking at breakfast.
That's right.
You're drinking at lunch.
I drink every hour. That's right.
Every hour you're drinking at the bar while you're watching that game.
I mean, nothing got too out of control, but of course, yeah, we were celebrating.
And that's when you choose to celebrate. You go out onto the Broad Street.
I mean, we'd stopped drinking a little bit before that, but yes, it was after we'd been drinking during the day. You're right.
That's when you step out onto Broad Street.
After drinking during the day, yes.
Ma'am, you choose to walk over to that pole.
Of course.
Mr. Farnsworth, he follows you.
Yeah.
Mr. Farnsworth, he doesn't say, no, I'm going to stay at the bar.
No,
After the two of you get to that light post, you're telling us you saw a ladder?
not a ladder. It was the fence. That's what I used to hoist myself up there.
Our permission to publish 35, a couple more copies.
Sure.
Ma'am, this fence, this barricade, you and I can agree, it doesn't look like a ladder. True?
Not at all. It's kind of the height of a stable, maybe. I sort of used it to push myself up.
When you saw that barricade, you didn't think it was a ladder.
No, not at all.
You hadn't seen other Philadelphia fans use that post as a ladder.
I mean, that was the first time I ever saw one of these fences, so no, I hadn't.
And you chose to use that barricade as a ladder.
It's what I used to hoist myself up there.
Ma'am, so when you see that barricade, you choose to jump over it.
I climbed onto it.
First, you jumped over that barricade, true?
Just to get a better grip before I got onto the post. That's right.
And then after choosing to jump over that barricade, that's when you choose to stand on top of it to climb that pole.
What I did.
And you watched as Mr. Farnsworth, he too jumps over that barricade.
He was telling me to stop. I should have listened.
And Mr. Farnsworth tells you to get down.
He did.
Tells you whatever you do, don't climb that pole.
Yeah.
You choose to climb that pole anyways.
I thought it would be safe. I was wrong.
And when you're at the top of that pole, you look down. Mr. Farnsworth was standing right underneath you.
What?
Thank you so much for your time today, ma'am. I'm so sorry for your loss. Nothing further wrong.
Thank you, counsel. Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Davidson, I want to pick up right where counsel left off. He asked you about Mr. Farnsworth being right beneath. Did you see anyone at any point go up to Mr. Farnsworth as he was standing there?
No,
Did you see a police officer tell him to move?
never.
Did you see a police officer move him out of the way?
No,
Did you see a police officer move the metal fence he was standing near?
no, they didn't do that.
The counsel also asked you about your decision to drink that day. What day was that, ma'am?
Super Bowl Sunday.
On Super Bowl Sunday. How many drinks did you have?
4, 5, maybe, I can't remember the exact number, but we started around 10. We were out until 10 p.m. that night, and I had one every hour, probably less.
Was there anything out of the ordinary for you?
No, I didn't feel drunk.
Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, no further questions.
No recross.
Okay. Plaintiff, anything else before you rest your case?
Yes, Your Honor. First, maybe Ms. Davidson be excused.
She may.
And at this point, we'd like to read the excerpt from our expert report. Would it be all right if Ms. Davis assumes the witness stand?
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you.
And I know this document was pre-admitted, but are you aware of what portions are going to be read? Did you concur about this?
We haven't talked about it before. We'd asked to be told what portions.
Sure.
Still object 403 to the testimony that's going to be read.
Sure, so let's pretend the jury's not here. Why don't you tell me what you're going to read out?
Yes, Your Honor. Sections 4 and 6.
And I apologize for interrupting you. Can someone give me a copy?
Sure. May I approach?
Yes. Thank you. All right, go ahead, counsel.
Yes, Your Honor. Sections 4 and 6 in their entirety. On the second page.
4, okay, the decisions concerning the fencing were negligent. And 6, the city's negligence caused or contributed to Farnsworth's death. Mr. Alfonso, do you have any objections on any other bases to either of those paragraphs? And take a second to read if you need to.
Thank you. No objection, Your Honor. They can read.
All right, great.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Davis, could you read section 4 from expert Ryan Devnat's report, the one titled "The Decisions Concerning the Fencing Were Negligent"?
The fences in question were short enough that almost any adult or teenager could easily climb over them. This was barely a deterrent. Moreover, the city appears not to have considered if metal fencing near light poles was itself a safety risk, given the possibility of people standing on the fences or falling from the light poles.
Could you also read section 6 at the bottom of that page? The city's negligence caused or contributed to Farnsworth's death.
If better fencing had prevented Davidson from reaching the pole, if police had prevented Davidson from climbing the pole, if grease had been used to prevent Davidson from reaching the top of the pole, or if the city doesn't have metal fence for Farnsworth to strike his head against, then this accident would not have happened.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. And with that, Your Honor, the plaintiff process.
Great.
Actually, Your Honor, if you mind standing right there as I read out another portion of it, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, Your Honor.
Okay, I think under the rule of completeness, I will let you read portions. Do you want to have your co-counsel go up and read the portions?
Sure.
Okay, so you can be seated, and then why don't you tell me before you start what you want to read in?
Your Honor, I'll be asking about where in this report that this expert hired by the plaintiff talks about the choices Mr. Farnsworth and his friend made, and it's not in there.
So essentially, you're wanting to cross her.
Your Honor, since this witness is unavailable and since plaintiff counsel chose to have their co-counsel read a section, it's only fair for, well, now my co-counsel to go up there and tell us what's not in that report.
So I'm not going to let you ask questions because technically this witness isn't here, right? What I will allow you to do, if you want to, read in any other portions, per the rule of completeness, I will let you read in another portion of this, but technically this, that person's not here. So you can't ask questions, but if you want to read something in, I will allow it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, so I don't know if you want to take a second, see if you want to read something, and then we'll go from there. Okay,
We'll be reading lines 17 through 20.
okay, so let's pause.
Sure.
Any issues with 17 through 20?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right, I think we're good.
Something about the jurisdiction, the witness is unavailable. Ms. Slade, can you read for the jury the line starting at 17 through 20?
I was hired by the plaintiff's attorney in Farnsworth versus Philadelphia to assess the defendant's conduct regarding the incident that killed Mr. Farnsworth. I was paid $1,000 an hour for the 10 hours I spent reviewing the file and creating this report. I'll be paid another $10,000 to testify in court.
Thank you, ma'am. Your Honor, nothing further.
All right. I think our case in chief is closed. Defense, whenever you're ready, you can call your witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Defense calls Miss Edwards. Good proceed.
You may.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Please introduce yourself to the jury.
of course. Good morning. My name is Walker Edwards.
What do you do for work, ma'am?
I'm the deputy of public safety here in Philadelphia.
How'd you get into that?
I moved here to Philadelphia in 1998 to go to Drexel. After I graduated, I worked with the mayor to consult for public safety. After that, I worked at the Office of Emergency Management and brought me here to being Director of Public Safety.
Do you have any certifications or specific education?
I do. I'm FEMA certified in crowd management. I also got my certification in crowd control from the National Association of State Fire Marshals. I also got my master's in public policy from Drexel University.
And were you in charge of the Super Bowl on February 9th, 2025, those safety procedures?
I was in charge of organizing the safety measures for the Super Bowl celebration, as well as making sure the birds made it safe to New Orleans. You'd be surprised how delicate Saquon Barkley actually.
Ma'am, before we talk about February 9th of 2025, I want to take a big step back, talk about Philadelphia.
All right.
Just as you said that Super Bowl was in New Orleans, why'd you take safety procedures in Philadelphia?
I'm sure some of you may know this, but the Philadelphia sports fans are passionate. Things can get a little bit chaotic sometimes when really any sports team in Philadelphia wins. Doesn't really happen so much for the Flyers.
Good one. Ma'am, when you were working as a director of public safety, what are some things that the city of Philadelphia would see?
We'd see people climbing poles, We'd see people climbing bus stops. We'd see people climbing garbage trucks. We'd even see people setting fires.
Now, could you open up that binder to exhibit number 30?
Of course. I'm there.
What are we looking at?
This is a photo of one of these celebrations. Somebody's climbing up a pole.
Does it look fair and accurate?
It does.
Has it been changed or altered?
No.
Defense offers 30.
Any objections?
Yes, Your Honor, to a lack of foundation and relevance at this time, may I be heard?
You may. Can someone give me a copy? Thank you. Okay, lack of foundation and relevance?
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
May I explain briefly?
Yeah.
Lack of foundation as to when exactly this picture was from. We have no idea whether it was from this year, this Super Bowl, or even years ago. If it wasn't from the night in question, it has no relevance to this case because it doesn't go to those safety protocols that day.
Okay, response.
Yes, Your Honor, we've laid the foundation. This is director of the Philadelphia Public Safety. She's more than able to testify to what photos she's seen of Philadelphians during those celebrations. Your Honor, in terms of relevance, one of the charges the plaintiff has brought in today's proceedings is about the reasoning and the rationale about time to grease or not to grease those light posts. We'll be talking about why this witness chose to grease those light posts in the past and why she chose not to for the events in question. It's absolutely relevant.
May I respond, Your Honor? The lack of foundation isn't to her ability to identify the photo she has as someone standing on a light post in Philadelphia. The question is when it is. If it was this year, it might have some relevance to her decision making for Super Bowl Sunday. If it was 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, it has no relevance.
I get your argument, but I'm gonna overrule the objection. I'm gonna allow it.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor, permission to publish for the jury?
Yes.
Ma'am, could you tell this jury what's going on in that photo?
Of course. This was after the Eagles won the NFC championships in 2023. As you can see, fans gathered to Center City and people were climbing poles.
Ma'am, does the city of Philadelphia encourage its fans to climb those poles?
No, sir, of course not.
Does the city control the crowd?
Of course, we do our best to try and do what we can to protect our citizens and make sure people don't get hurt.
How?
A couple of things. We've tried different things over the years. It depends on what the city's needs are at the time. One of the first things that we started doing to prevent people from climbing poles like this was to try and grease them.
Why would you first try to grease those poles?
We were hoping that by greasing the poles, the surfaces would become slippery and difficult for people to actually climb up. We tried a number of different types of grease over the years.
After you tried a number of different types of grease, was greasing a pole effective to making sure people didn't try and climb?
At first it was, but unfortunately, eventually it wasn't. In the photo of the man climbing on the Super Bowl 2023, I apologize, NFC championships, we had greased the poles that day, but people would still find a way to climb.
Your Honor, let the record reflect, I'll be showing this witness a still photo of exhibit 41. It's a much longer video.
Okay.
Here you go.
Thank you.
What are we looking at here?
Again, we're looking at another man climbing up one of the poles.
Ma'am, does it look fair and accurate?
It does.
Has it been changed or altered?
No, it hasn't.
Defense offers only this specific still of that much larger video as exhibit 41.
Any objection?
We have no objections to this still photo coming in, Your Honor.
Okay, it's admitted.
May I receive or retrieve?
Yes.
Oh, ma'am, can you tell the members of the jury what's happening in this photo?
One of the reasons that greasing poles eventually became ineffective is that people would find ways to get around it. As you can see in that picture, man brought a rope with him so that he could climb the poles.
Ma'am, after citizens of Philadelphia start bringing a rope to climb those poles, what did the city do?
Realized we had to do something different. We started blocking off the streets. We started increasing our police presence, trying to find other ways that we could try and discourage people from climbing poles.
And after you blocked the streets, increased the police presence, was that enough?
Unfortunately, it wasn't. People were still finding their way to climb poles.
Ma'am, what happened on the 2025 NFC Championship game?
A young man, 18-year-old boy named Nazir Muldrow. He died when he climbed up one of the poles.
Ma'am, if 2 weeks before the Super Bowl, someone died climbing up one of those poles, did the city do the same exact thing 2 weeks later?
Of course not.
What changes did you make to your safety procedures?
We made two big changes. The first thing that we did was start a media campaign. The next thing was to add barricades across. the city.
Objection, Your Honor, under Rule 403, may I be heard?
Sure.
Specifically to the use of the word barricades. Based on reading this witness's deposition, she describes two different phenomena. One, erecting fences that are only a couple feet tall around the light poles, and then second, erecting wooden barricades. That's when she does use that word in her deposition in front of City Hall. Those are much bigger, much taller, and intentionally meant to prevent anyone from getting inside. What we've seen in Exhibit 35, the metal fence, is just a couple feet tall, as Ms. Davidson testified earlier. So for the members of the jury to hear this witness, a safety expert, testify that they erected barricades around the pole, when that word is not used in her deposition, and it's very different from the substantial barricades they did erect, that goes to prejudice the members of the jury.
Response.
Your Honor, in order for evidence to be put in a fourth, it has to be substantially more prejudicial than it is probative. And we've heard a lot of words so far in this trial that describe Exhibit 35, from ladders to fencing to barricades. It's not more substantially more prejudicial to the jury to look what that is and call it a barricade instead of a ladder.
Yeah,
It goes to weight, not admissibility.
sorry for cutting you off. I'm
No
gonna
worries.
overrule the objection, but if you want to cross on this topic, you are well within your right to do so, okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Ma'am, I'll ask my question again. Can you tell us more about those media campaigns that the city launched?
Of course. The mayor started announcing, encouraging people not to climb those poles. She also warned people that, if you participated in illegal behavior like climbing poles, be fully prosecuted.
And after the mayor of Philadelphia tells its citizens they would be fully prosecuted, what else did the city of Philadelphia do?
We also put up barricades around every single pole in Center City.
You turn to Exhibit 35, photo of those barricades.
I'm there.
Ma'am, are those barricades what the city of Philadelphia put up?
It is.
Why?
Well, we want to discourage people from climbing the poles. We were hoping to create some distance between the sidewalk and the poles, sort of acting as a stop sign almost.
What do you mean these barricades acted as a stop sign?
People would go to the poles, see that there's a barricade, and ideally stop and not go past the barricades.
Ma'am, after the city of Philadelphia increases their police presence, builds those barricades, social media campaigns, are you aware that on that night, someone jumped over those barricades?
I am. Two young kids, Sam Farnsworth and Lanny Davidson. They jumped the barricade that night and Sam Farnsworth passed him.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Your Honor, nothing further.
Thank you, counsel.
May I receive a cross-examination, Your Honor? Morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
You used the word barricades to describe the fences you erected on direct examination, right?
I did.
Ms. Davis was writing it down. Would it surprise you to learn that you used that word 6 times?
I'm not sure. I wasn't keeping count.
You used it multiple times, right?
Sure.
Ma'am, could you tell the members of the jury how many times you used the word barricades to describe those fences in your deposition?
I'm not sure.
If I showed it to you, do you think you'd be able to point out a single time?
If you could hand it to me, I could try and find it. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Take a moment to look. you would agree with me that at page 54, line 32, you use the word fences, right?
Sorry, line,
Page 54, line 32.
I did use the word fence.
And would it, if you could take a look and look for any time you use the word barricade?
I don't think I used the exact word barricade, sir. No, I'm not seeing that.
All right, now that we've cleared that issue up for the members of the jury, I want to talk about how Philadelphia sports fans typically celebrate big wins. Because you'd agree with me that climbing light poles is not exactly rare in Philly, right?
No,
You've received over 100 reports of fans doing that in the past, right?
I'd say we've received over 100 reports.
Over 100 reports, right?
Yes,
Now, normally, the city puts grease on the pole to try to stop that, right?
we started doing that in 2018. I came up with the idea and we did it for about 5 years.
You did it from 2018 all the way to 2023, right?
That's true.
I want to walk through how many reports of climbing the poles you got when you greased them. Because in the 2018 NFC Championship game, you greased the poles, right?
We did.
And you
That was
received,
the first time we used Crisco grease. You could get it at any Aldi's.
10 reports of people climbing, right?
I believe that's the number we received, yes.
2018 Super Bowl, you greased the poles again, right?
The 2018 Super Bowl, yes, we also greased the poles that day.
You received 12 reports of climbing, right?
That's right.
2022 NLCS, the Phillies were playing, right?
They were.
You greased the poles again, right?
We did.
You received 15 reports of climbing.
That's right. The number went.
2023 NFC Championship game, you greased the poles one last time. Is that true?
That's true.
And you received 15 reports of climbing again?
We did.
Now, you told the members of the jury on direct examination a moment ago that when you greased the poles, that wasn't effective, right?
We found eventually it wasn't effective. The numbers, as you can see, they went up.
Right, some people still climbed, right?
Exactly.
Went up all the way from 10 to 15, right?
That's right. People were finding ways to get around it. They were bringing towels, bringing ropes.
And so, as you told the members of the jury, you decided, well, this isn't working perfectly well. Let's try not greasing the poles, right?
That's right.
So 2025 NFC Championship game, you decided not to grease the poles, true?
That's true. Every year we were getting more and more people attending these Super Bowl and other public celebrations. We were increasing the numbers of people climbing the poles were increasing as well.
Right, so it went from 10 to 15. We've got to try something new, right?
That's right.
So you don't grease the poles, right?
We didn't.
Ma'am, for this NFC Championship game, when you didn't grease the poles, it didn't go up from 15 to 20, did it?
No, we received 75 reports that day.
75 reports of people climbing the poles?
That's true. It was the largest sports celebration we had ever had in Philadelphia that day.
So you made a change when it went from 10 to 15, right?
That's right.
Then it went from 15 to 75, right?
That's right.
And so for the 2025 Super Bowl, did you make a change again?
We did.
Ma'am, you didn't grease the poles for the 2025 Super Bowl, did you?
No. Instead, we put up the metal fences around every single street pole in Center City.
Ma'am, for the 2025 Super Bowl, that was 2 weeks after the NFC Championship game, true?
That's true.
2 weeks after a young man lost his life.
Nessie or Moldro. Yeah,
2 weeks after you received 75 reports of people climbing, right?
that's true.
But you decided not to grease the poles again, true?
That's true. We didn't grease the poles and instead we put fences around every single street pole in Center City.
Man, fact is, greasing the poles, that's expensive, wouldn't you say?
It would cost around $10,000.
Expensive, you'd say that, true?
That's true.
Cost of $10,000 to the city's budget, true?
That's right.
And now that we've talked a little bit about the lighthouses, I want to move on to the landing zone beneath. If you could take a look at Exhibit 6.
I'm there.
You recognize this as a police report from one of Philadelphia's officers, right?
Yeah,
You read it?
I received this from Officer Joe Jones.
Looks fair and accurate.
It does to me.
Your Honor, the plaintiff offers exhibit sets.
Any objection?
Without objection.
Correct, it's admitted.
Ma'am, this is the report from the responding officer to the incident where Sam Farnsworth died, right?
It is.
The officer says that he saw Lanny Davidson up on the pole, right?
He does.
Saw Sam Farnsworth down at the bottom, true?
That's true.
But despite seeing Lanny Davidson climbing the pole, the officer doesn't say that he moved Sam out of the way, does he?
No, he doesn't.
Doesn't say he told Sam to leave, right?
He doesn't.
Doesn't say he moved the metal fence right underneath Lanny Davidson, right?
No, instead, he says he was yelling at Miss Davidson and ordering her down.
Doesn't say he brought in a ladder so that she could climb down, right?
No, sir.
Doesn't say that he saw someone right underneath her and said, stay put, don't move, right?
No, sir, he doesn't say that.
Instead, the officer yelled, this is the police, I'm ordering you down now, right?
That's exactly what it says here.
Lanny Davidson started to move after he yelled, right?
Yes, the person immediately began descending. I assume that was Lanny Davidson.
That's when Miss Davidson slipped, right?
That's right. Just a moment into their descent, they appear to slip.
With Sam still right underneath them.
That's true. It says that Miss Davidson landed on top of Sam Farnsworth.
With the fence still right underneath.
That's true. Mr. Farnsworth was inside of the fencing.
Thank you, ma'am. Don't have nothing further.
Thank you, counsel. Let me redirect.
Yes, Your Honor.
Before we go into that, do you intend to use this whiteboard?
I intend to gesture towards it.
Sure, then we'll leave it up.
Thank you, Your Honor. Hey, a quick time check.
Yeah, you have 25 seconds remaining.
Ma'am, looking at that police report, what does that police officer yell at Miss Davidson?
Get down.
Ma'am, was that before or after Miss Davidson chooses to keep climbing?
Before.
Ma'am, looking at the changes in these numbers, what did you use? Did you do the same exact thing between 2023 and 2025?
Of course not.
Thank you so much for your time, ma'am. Just some time.
Thank you, counsel. Mr. McDonald, do you want to preserve this for closing?
Yes, Ron.
I think yes. Okay, so we'll mark this as plaintiff A, exhibit A. What do you want to do?
Sounds good,
Does
Your
that
Honor.
work? Okay,
Work to the fence.
you just want to push it away and turn it around?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Actually, could I use it for my closing argument in just a moment?
You're right, that's the next thing.
Okay.
So we're just gonna leave it there.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else?
None, Your Honor. Defense rests our case in
All right,
chief.
you may be
Councilman said.
Great. So let's take 30 seconds. You guys can collect yourselves. And then we'll go into closing.
Yes, Your Honor.
So if you need to chat with your partner or whatever, just take a minute.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's do it.
May I proceed?
You may.
And please the court. Counsel. The city chose to save money instead of a man's life. Members of the jury, when our city officials are warned, clearly, urgently, repeatedly, that the city streets after game day aren't safe, that there's a risk of fans climbing the light poles and there's a risk of them falling down. And when our city officials have measures they can take to address those risks, we expect them to protect human life. Not prioritize the budget, not assume everything will be okay, not hope for the best. When they have measures they can take to reduce the risk, we expect them to take those measures. That's the duty this city ignored. Because in January of this year, when they tried a new experiment, when they tried not to grease the poles, and a young man lost his life because of it, this city chose to learn nothing and change nothing, and do the exact same thing again. They chose to save money, the money it would cost to grease the poles, instead of a man's life. Why you're here? Because when our city officials ignore the evidence, it's not just unreasonable, it's negligent. To prove our claim of negligence, we had to prove 3 elements to you by a preponderance of the evidence, which means more likely true than not. That the city acted unreasonably, that Sam Farnsworth suffered harm as a result, and that the city's unreasonable actions were the cause of that harm. In the minutes remaining, I want to walk you through the 3 risks the city created, knew about, and ignored that prove they acted unreasonably, and the 3 risks that led to Sam Farnsworth's death: the light posts, the ladders, and the landing zone. We'll start with the light posts, because you'll have this as you go back into deliberation. These numbers are extremely important. For 5 years, from 2018 to 2023, the city did grease the poles. During those years, they received reports of 10, 12, 15 people climbing the poles. And they decided that jump you heard from Ms. Edwards from 10 to 15, that was too much. We've got to change our strategy. And so in 2025, they decided, let's try not greasing the poles. Let's see if that changes anything. Didn't just jump from 10 to 15, didn't just increase by 50%, it increased by 500%, fivefold, from 15 to 75. And what did they do? They didn't change their strategy. They tried to tell you, well, we put up short metal fences. That doesn't do anything, members of the church. The grease is what prevented people from climbing. When they stopped greasing, 5 times as many people tried. They saw that information and they decided just to do the same thing all over again, not grease the poles once more. You heard from Ms. Davidson. When the poles were greased, she didn't climb. When the poles weren't greased, it was easy. They saw those statistics. They knew those reports. We're here in court because they just stopped listening. That brings us to the ladders. Because the one thing they tried to hang their hat on is, oh, we did make a change. We did put up small metal fences. They tried to call it a barricade throughout trial. It's not a barricade, folks. It's like 2 feet tall. You heard from Ms. Davidson, climbing over it was easy. And it's not just that fact. It's that Ms. Davidson was able to use the fence as a ladder, that she stepped on top and was able to get up the pole that way. And what's more is, folks, they put these metal fences at the base of the pole that they know fans will climb. What do they think will happen? If someone falls, they should have known that that person would land on the fence. You saw that's how Sam Farnsworth died, because he smacked his head into the metal fence the city put there. And even then, members of the jury, the city's actions might be a little bit excusable, except for the fact that they had another chance to fix the problem, because a police officer saw what was going on. You saw the report today. We were the ones who showed you that evidence, what their officer did. The officer sees Lanny Davidson at the top of the pole, sees Sam Farnsworth at the bottom. Does he clear the landing zone? Does he go over to the pole and move Sam out of the way? Does he tell Sam to leave? Fans do this all the time. Does he clear the metal fence so that no one hits their head on? Does the officer go over to another police officer and perhaps bring in a ladder? No. The city gave Lanny Davidson a ladder up, but declined to give her a ladder down. What happened next? The officer doesn't just Not yell up, stay there, there's someone beneath you, don't move, we need to clear this person. The officer does the exact opposite. The officer goes over and yells up, get down now, try to come down from the pole, as there's someone standing right there beneath it and the metal fence to hit their head on. And so when Miss Davidson does start to come down from the pole, she slips. She falls on Sam, who's still there, who hits his head on the ladder that's still there. And that's why we're here in court, and that's why Sam Farnsworth isn't here today. Members of the jury, if at any point the city officials exercised an ounce of common sense, we wouldn't be here. If they realized that the decision not to grease the poles would cause 5 times as many people to climb, we wouldn't be here. If they realized that the metal fence at the base of the pole, first off, helped people climb up, but second, was actively dangerous when they did, we wouldn't be here. If the officer had realized that he had many choices to fix the problem, and even if he didn't do the one thing he did, we wouldn't be here. But we're here in court because they had decision after decision after decision, all of which could have avoided this problem, and they got every single one wrong. Find them liable. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Defense, whenever you're ready.
Before I proceed, may I retrieve exhibit 30 from the jury?
You may.
Thank you. May I proceed?
You may.
They chose to jump that barricade. Members of the jury, literally right outside this courtroom, right above us, there's a walkway and there's a railing. That railing is there to protect someone from accidentally walking by and falling off that second floor walkway. As you may remember, when you walked in, there was no signs saying you cannot step up on to that railing. The mayor of Philadelphia certainly wasn't up there saying whatever you do, you cannot step up on that railing. There was no police officers telling people not to step up on that railing. But if someone chooses to step up on to that railing, and they fall, it's not this building's fault. So you have to ask yourselves what a reasonable person would do. A reasonable person wouldn't step up on to that railing. But you learn today that's what Mr. Farnsworth and Miss Davidson decide to do. And when they did so, when they make that choice, the responsibility isn't in the city's hands. It's in their own. But when the plaintiff sues the city of Philadelphia for the choices those 2 individuals made, well, you learn about what they had to do. They had the burden to prove by preponderance of the evidence it was the city's fault. And majority, they failed to meet their burden. And you know why? Because you heard from the director of public safety from the city of Philadelphia. And she told you that the city doesn't just let these Philadelphia fans do what they want to do. They take step after step. They try thing after thing to make the difference. And you heard about what was ineffective. Greasing the poles was ineffective. It didn't solve the problem. People still risked their lives and tried to climb those poles. So we learned they did something different. Members of the jury, plaintiff counsel is missing another year. 2 weeks later, 2025, that's the Super Bowl. They don't, as plaintiff says, do the same exact thing. You learn the differences they made. They spent way more than only $10,000 for the city of Philadelphia. $10,000 is a drop in the bucket. Think how much it costs to put up these fences, these barricades, not up on one pole, but every single pole in the city of Philadelphia. And we learned about the police officer who was there that day. And you learn that police officer, Officer Jones, and you'll get to have that report when you go back in the deliberations room, and you'll learn how that police officer acted as he should have. He screamed, "You need to get down from that pole." The city, they took reasonable measures. But what you'll learn today, and what the judge will instruct you, is that negligence is doing what a city reasonably would act to do. What does the plaintiff expect is reasonable? Sure, the city can always do more. They could have put up 15-foot high fences around those poles, armed guards, spotlights shining on them, but those aren't reasonable actions. A reasonable action is to put up that barricade. And they did. The mayor of Philadelphia was telling its fans, "Do not climb those poles. You will be prosecuted for it." You learned today those were reasonable actions, and the city had reasonable reasons for doing what they did and doing what they did. Now, if you agree that the city of Philadelphia acted reasonably, this trial, it's over. You can put your phone down and put those check marks away. But if you don't, there's still one more thing you have to consider. That's when our affirmative defense, it comes into play. You have to decide if what they chose to do, choosing to jump that barricade, caused their own death. And members of the jury, we've met our burden today, showing you it's more likely than not that that choice is what killed them. Members of the jury, for the same reason, if someone chooses to stand on top of that railing, if someone chooses to jump over that barricade, if someone chooses to climb that pole, it's their own choice. And yes, today, myself and Mr. McDonald, we disagreed on what to call those things. Fence, barricade. You have to decide what a reasonable person thinks when they look at this. Do they see a fence? Do they see a barricade? Members of the jury, a reasonable person certainly doesn't see a ladder. A reasonable person certainly doesn't look at this and go, "That's my landing zone." Those aren't reasonable thoughts. And it's not a reasonable thought for Mr. Farnsworth or Miss Davis. Members of the jury, these weren't two kids who stayed up too late. 23 years old. They were adults. You learned today they were in law school. If someone chooses to forget about their own safety, as Mr. Farnsworth jumps that barricade and tells them to come down 2 weeks before they learned how dangerous it was when Mr. Muldrow died, was their own choice. Remember, jury, I understand why they chose what they did. Philadelphia, they won the Super Bowl. And they wanted to celebrate, and they had every right to do so. But when you choose to jump over that barricade, you take responsibility for your action. The city of Philadelphia controlled the crowd, but didn't matter. Because Mr. Farnsworth, Miss Davidson, they chose to jump over that barricade. Now the city of Philadelphia's fate is in your hands. Find the city of Philadelphia, not mine. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, counsel. Any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor, a quick time check.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. I proceed.
You may.
Council says that when you fall from a railing, the building's not at fault. But as the judge will instruct you in just a moment, the city's not a building. It's got what's called a duty of care. Meaning when there is a risk, when the city has measures they can take to protect against it, the city has an affirmative duty to take those measures. And when they act unreasonably, when they don't, it is their fault. Council says that $10,000 is a drop in the bucket for the city of Philadelphia. I couldn't agree more. That's all it would have cost to grease the polls and go back into the top 4 numbers and stay away from the bottom. A drop in the bucket, but they didn't want to spend even that. This city chose to save money instead of a man's life. Find them responsible. Find them liable. Thank you.
Right.